Hey everyone, it's Jonathan, and welcome back to I Heart Animation. I'm so excited to be doing another episode on an animated film. Last year, I don't think I did any podcast episodes on animation that weren't specifically for another project, like a Christmas episode, or Every Version Ever, or the Disney Movie Marathon. In fact, in going back through the titles I've already done, I think the last time I covered an animated title outside of the context of any other series was October 2020, when Sarah and I did a deep dive into Over the Garden Wall. Hopefully this year I can remedy this oversight. I have a bunch of iHeart Animation episodes planned, some for other series, but I also have several recorded or scheduled to record based on standalone titles, and I'm so excited to share those, starting with today's episode, The Last Unicorn. I watched this movie as a kid, and I remember liking it despite how different it was from other animated movies I'd watched at the time. It wasn't one that fully stuck with me though, as I hadn't seen it since I was a kid, even though I would think of it from time to time, especially that theme song. When I started this podcast, it was one I had in the back of my mind to cover eventually. I even bought the DVD a couple years ago, so finally I decided this year it's going to be one of the first ones I do. Joining me today is Nikki from Trivial Theater. I asked her to do this one with me because even though I hadn't seen it in years, I remembered that it was weird, and her channel is all about weird movies, many of which are from the 80s, like this one is, so I figured she'd be the perfect guest. So, had you seen The Last Unicorn before I suggested doing it for the podcast?
I've heard about it for years, but this was the first time I'd ever seen it. And
Okay.
everybody because I felt like I had to discuss it after I saw it. And everybody I talked to either like they had heard of it or they grew up on it. So, there's that nostalgia trip that kind of goes along with anything from our childhoods or, things you watch as a kid. It was just, I can see from a kid perspective, this being like, it's like The Secret of Nim or any of those, like those early 90s or early 80s movies where they've got that really dark, that dark kind of feel. Like they're just like, they're built to be dark or they're built to be to have those moments or anything that's rated PG. From that era, you look at it and go, how did this not get rated, PG-13 or R?
Well,
and it's
according
like
to my DVD case, this is rated G, and I was shocked.
I remember seeing something about that. I think the original was released as G, but then it was re-released as PG-13 on like one of the later versions. This was released before the PG-13 rating, so
Yeah.
that might have been why. I remember reading something on the rating. Here we go. Despite being rated G by the MPAA, female nudity is briefly seen. Additionally, swearing and substance abuse is also found in this movie. 2 years later, these were taken out of the G-rated version, but were kept in the PG-13 version. Okay, that's what it was.
Okay. Well, I must have the G version that has all the stuff that should have been PG-13 then.
I guess so, yeah. Like the fact that they didn't have a thing with like, a tree with a rather large chest, but were kind of put off by the fact that Prince Lear said damn.
That would be the least of my concern. Some people get upset about the weirdest things, like really that this over here didn't bother you, but this did.
Yeah, everybody's got different levels of what constitutes like bad stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
Like look at people that are into horror. You get the folks that are, oh well, this person got decapitated. That's not a big deal, but that there's an intimate scene and people go crazy. It's that different levels of what makes up what makes something bad or not bad.
Yeah, that is true. I guess I'm a lot more tolerant these days than I was a long time ago. So
yeah. Well, and too, the people that look at this that grew up with it, I imagine, you do have a blind spot for the stuff you grew up with.
Well, it kind of makes me. I watched this as a kid. I watched it like my uncle used to hit record at night on the Disney Channel and then just give me the tape. Like whatever it was, I got. That's how I saw a ton of old Disney movies, because they had something called Vault Disney, and they would play old Disney movies. So that's why I'm so familiar with so many old Disney movies. But this played one night. So I had this on a VHS from the Disney Channel, and I'm kind of wondering, did I get a censored version? Because I don't remember a bunch of the stuff that was in this.
That's possible.
The harpy specifically, I do not. I don't know how they would censor that though.
It'd be a massive part taken out. And regarding the movie itself, is I guess it's an hour and a half movie. So, I mean, in theory, they'd cut it down for TV to start with, and like that particular part of the movie, it's not. There's so much in this movie that like you could pluck out and you wouldn't necessarily miss it. Like until they get to the castle, they really don't. There's other pieces, but it's not like you could lose them and not really, you could go on and not realize it wasn't there, but that's still a big part.
Well, I know the harpy was in it because I remember the harpy and I remember what happened to Mommy Fortuna. So the harpy was in there, and I just don't remember the harpy
going crazy.
The anatomically correct part of the harpy.
Oh, God.
I feel like that would have made more of an impression on me, but I guess either they censored it somehow or little kid me just didn't notice.
I mean, you could, if you didn't, and I think adult
I probably didn't know what it was because she had so much fur too.
Yeah, I mean, you could have seen that as like an additional layer of like you said, fur, or just like appendage things hanging, or like look at God, what's his name? The wizard. I'm gonna screw it up. Schmendrick. Remember Schmendrick? I think
it's Schmendrick with an N.
Schmendrick.
It's a weird name.
It's totally weird. Like at first, like I thought, like Hendrik Schmendrick. Okay, got to keep that in my head. If I screw it up again, I apologize. Why can't his name be like just Rick or Schmender? Anyway,
Bill the Wizard. Exactly,
Bill. There are some who call me Tim. But if you look at the wizard Schmendrick's like bag, like his travel bag, it does have some of the same look as the harpy's like appendages.
Really?
A little bit, yeah. Like it kind of has like 2 or 3 little boppy things at the bottom of it, and there's like little tassels hanging from it.
Was it supposed to have been made of a harpy or something? I didn't notice that at all. I
don't think so. I think I just was like watching and it's like, oh, that's weird. And again, that might just be my weird brain seeing things, but yeah. So that's like, I think I saw the harpy and then I saw that and it's like, oh, is it supposed to be a connection between them? Cause I guess I get so used to like looking at the background for stuff. Like that's kind of how my brain works.
Well, there was a lot in the background that you could look for in this.
Oh yeah. Tons. And I'm sure you probably
castle.
And I'm sure you saw a lot more than what I did. So,
well, I guess we can start at the beginning.
That is an excellent place to start.
Sorry. So it opens with 2 hunters riding through the woods, and they're discussing how this is a unicorn's forest, and they're not going to catch anything here because creatures that live in a unicorn forest learn magic of their own. Specifically, they can disappear. Mm-hmm. And they're leaving, and the hunter calls out to the unicorn, telling her to stay where she is because she's the last of her kind, which is apparently news to her. She had no idea.
Can you imagine just some random guy like walking through your woods and going, oh, hey, by the way, you're the last of your kind. Like, wouldn't you like, give him a gift and be like, hey, I'm so sorry that you're the last of your kind. Or something like, and I joke, but I just like, it's such a weird, like you're having this conversation, but you're saying it really loud. Clearly you're trying to insult this poor unicorn that has no one left.
It would be a weird thing to overhear.
Very much.
Or to have yelled at you from a stranger.
In case there are any unicorns around. You're the last one.
And this leads into the theme song. What did you think of the music in this movie?
I actually really like it's got that, not all of it worked, but like the theme song was really good, I thought.
Yeah. The whole soundtrack is very of the time.
Oh yeah.
Like the whole thing was done by a band called America, which I don't know outside of this movie.
So they did the song Horse with No Name.
I looked them up and I recognized some titles. So I guess I kind of knew them. I just didn't know that they'd done specific songs.
Right. And I think that's the case with a lot of bands of that era. It's like you'd know the music,
Yeah,
but you'd have
probably.
no idea who the actual band is.
Hmm.
Like I even remember them being advertised as like their greatest hits or whatever. But yeah, as far as the actual, I couldn't pick them out in a lineup by any stretch.
Hmm. Yeah, well, they've kind of, I don't know that it's entirely this movie, but this is like one of the main things that they're known for now because everybody knows The Last Unicorn, or at least people who are part of The Last Unicorn's cult following. This
People in the
is,
know.
yeah, but I kind of love the soundtrack, even though it's like so out of place for the type of story.
Yeah.
Like you normally expect something like John Williams or some other grand fantasy composer,
Yeah, you're
a
right.
sweeping score.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Especially a little bit later into it when the unicorn comes up against the Red Bull, like that whole soundtrack piece there just doesn't work at all. It's the complete opposite of what you'd expect
Hmm.
for that point in time.
Yeah, but the parts where it like turns almost into a music video, I kind of love those parts.
Well, you think about like Fire and Ice and some of the other movies that like animated movies that would have come out at this time. I don't know if that was a trend or not, but you definitely saw that in other pieces of that era.
But yeah, the main theme song, The Last Unicorn, even like years after I had seen the movie, like I haven't until now I hadn't seen this for years. Like I bought the DVD a long time ago and still hadn't watched it, but I remembered that song. Like that song stuck with me more than a lot of the stuff in the movie did. Just that main Last Unicorn theme song. I really like that song.
Oh yeah, and it's got the lyrics get a little funky, but the tune itself is very it's actually very good.
Yeah, and I like how it has a feel of, I don't know how to put it, like the kind of fantasy sci-fi stuff from probably that era, but like maybe like imagining some sort of dystopian future, like
Yeah,
the
there's a melancholy to it.
yeah, especially like at the beginning, like when the last eagle cries. Like they're talking about the last of all these things, like it's the end of the world basically. But
Mm-hmm.
I just really like that song.
No, agreed. I enjoyed it too. It was very, very good. So you're in good company there. But yeah, you get some of these movies like this, and it's like there's such a. I mean, whether you're talking about like The Secret of Nim or Plague Dogs or some of those, it's just like it's not even. I suppose it's just a darkness. It's not like rainbows and literal unicorns. It's like there's a sorrow to it.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Yeah, and
like
there
even though the last unicorn at the very end generally has a happy ending, it's not a happy
it's a
ending.
bittersweet ending.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very much. Like everything ends the way it probably should, but it's not like they ride off into the sunset. As a rainbow forms overhead or whatever.
Yeah, this is not a Disney movie, which I
No,
love Disney movies, but sometimes I like movies that are more like this one.
but even a lot of Disney movies don't necessarily have like the end all be all happy ending.
That's true.
Like more modern ones do, but like I don't know. It's been forever since I've seen like the Black Cauldron, but like Labyrinth, I don't know. Some of those
I
don't
was thinking of The
necessarily.
Fox and the Hound.
That too. Uneven with this, and I guess we talk high fantasy, and this is kind of in that realm. But like you look at Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit,
Hmm.
again, they end the way that they're probably supposed to, but the endings are very bittersweet.
Yeah, I guess that's one thing we haven't touched. This movie was made by the same people who did the animated version of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, which I haven't watched yet, but that's another on my long list of things to eventually watch.
I've not seen The Hobbit, but the Lord of the Rings movie it's fascinating from a trivia perspective. Like the way that they did it is just like as a kid, that scared the crap out of me. The way they do the ring wraiths, especially, like there's just this. It's not uncanny valley. They basically took the footage of people riding horses and turned it into animation, sort of. And it's just
Rotoscoping.
yeah. And thank you for the proper terms, but it is genuinely kind of terrifying to a kid, and maybe
I
even
can imagine. Yeah.
yeah.
Maybe we should do that one sometime because that one
Yeah.
has been one that I've been wanting to watch for a long time.
Oh,
Both
yeah.
The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings.
And I think the styles are quite different, but the Lord of the Rings one for sure is it has some moments where you're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna go over and hide behind the couch for a few minutes.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid seeing those at the library, and I didn't like the look of them, so I never wanted to check them out.
That's okay. You have that right.
But yeah, this is by Rankin Bass, who made those other ones. But they also they're most famous for like their Christmas specials, like Rudolph and Frosty. And I thought it was hilarious because I was watching the behind the scenes stuff after I finished the movie. And Peter S. Beagle, who's the author and who also wrote the screenplay for the movie, said that basically they only went with Rankin Bass because nobody else would take them, and he didn't like the idea because he hated everything that Rankin Bass had done.
Oh my god.
Like he hated Frosty and Rudolph. He didn't think that they were going to be capable of making this into a good movie. So he was like at the end when they finally finished the movie and he watched it, he was like, and I didn't know what to say because it was so good. Like they actually made a good film.
Oh my god. Well, and the people that animated this, I'm trying to find what the actual company name was here.
It went on.
It's like
Topcraft.
Yeah, and it went on to become Studio Ghibli.
Yeah, that was. I had read that like a month ago, like an article that said something like, "The Last Unicorn is secretly a Studio Ghibli movie," and I was like, "What?" And I guess in a way, because a lot of the animators did end up moving on to Studio Ghibli, because I think this Topcraft went out of business, and then Miyazaki, like either bought them out or just got all the animators to move on to his company.
Ah.
So in a way, it is kind of a Studio Ghibli film, but not exactly because it was Rankin Bass. Like they were in charge of the whole thing. They had final say in everything, and the animators just did what they were supposed to. And some things they were like allowed to give their own ideas on. Like in the documentary, they talked about how sometimes they really liked the Japanese influence. The Red Bull specifically is very Japanese anime inspired, but other things they completely mistranslated and didn't understand what they wanted, so they had to like go back to the drawing board with. So they took some of their ideas, but in the end, like everything was from Rankin Bass and that team. Like they had final say on everything.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, being that they're the company over top of it, I mean, you got to kind of do what they say. Mm-hmm. I was going to say when the unicorn is in human form, just the way that she's drawn, like even her outline, like everybody else has a very clear dark or black outline, and hers is kind of more brownish. Like she looks ethereal. She doesn't look like she belongs like everything else. And I'd say she has a very strong anime look. Like I would, if you picked her out of that and like popped her just on her own, you'd say, oh, it looks like an anime piece. At least, and I'm no anime expert by any stretch, but just the way she's drawn, like gives it that feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that. And her eyes too.
Very much. Because everybody else's eyes are very, I don't know, like I suppose, like you say, they like from what I've seen of artwork from The Hobbit, it gives it very much that feel.
Yes.
And it is a very, very 80s style of doing business.
Yeah. Anyway, back to the point where we were in the movie.
Sorry. That was a real tangent. I'm proud of us.
It had a point though. It was on topic.
True.
So the unicorn, after the theme song, the unicorn is talking about being the last, and she doesn't actually believe she's the last. She's like, this can't be. I'm sure she probably, because the events that led to her being the last, I think, have been recent enough that she probably feels like she saw a unicorn recently, because they
Right.
live for like thousands of years. So she probably saw one like 50 years ago and thought, but I just saw somebody the other day.
Exactly. Exactly.
So she's talking about being the last and not believing it. And then this butterfly comes along who he barely made any sense. Like, I think that's the point. I'm not sure. Like, I haven't read the book. I should probably read this book. But the butterfly didn't sound like he was making a whole lot of sense, except he talks about the Red Bull and it like chased all the unicorns into the sea. Something like that. That's part of his ramblings. He said a whole lot of other stuff that I don't remember, but that's the important part.
Yeah. He sang like a lot, like he'd go from one song to the next, and then he'd, tell something of that of note, and then he jumped right back into singing.
Uh-huh.
And it was like he'd go from, I don't think he did Oh Danny Boy, but like Molly Malone to some show tune to back to something else, and he was all over the board.
Yeah, he kind of reminded me of Merlin in Sword of the Stone, or the genie in Aladdin.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
kind of, he made a lot of anachronistic references,
Very
stuff that
much.
he shouldn't know for the time he's supposed to be in.
Yeah. He's a time lord.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I
Another,
was like, why don't if he keeps bothering you like this, Miss Unicorn, maybe just like poke him with your horn, maybe make him explode. I don't think the world would be less if he wasn't there.
and she wouldn't regret it because unicorns don't regret. So
Exactly. That is a very good point.
another thing that the butterfly says is that people can't see what she is. They will only see a white mare. So if somebody sees her out in the woods, they're just going to see a horse, which is kind
this
of important
was
later.
Yeah, and this was the one point that I kind of had a question about, because later on they talk about how people have forgotten about unicorns, and that's why they don't see them as unicorns. Is that ever said anything more about, or is it just that like there's a certain magic to unicorns where humans don't see them as unicorns?
I'm not really sure. There was a lot in this movie that I feel like doesn't make a lot of sense if you really start thinking about it. It's more like fairy tale logic. Like,
True.
things happen, and if you start questioning it, the story might start falling apart. Like, how does this character know this specific thing? And then I just had to tell myself it's a fairy tale.
Right.
Don't think too hard on it.
It's a because plot level of thing.
Yeah, kind of.
Oh, that's fair.
Which is fine for the kind of story that this is. I'm not looking
Oh
for
yeah.
something that makes perfect sense.
Well, not even the best of movies makes perfect sense. There's always ways to poke holes and stuff. So,
Yeah.
But no, in this particular instance, yeah, I understand what you mean.
I liked the touch here where she's deciding to leave and she's going to go try and find where the unicorns went. And there's like this whole crowd of animals behind her. And I liked that there was some dodos in the crowd.
Oh my God, that was so funny. All I was thinking was, why are there dodos? I mean, it's good to see them alive and kicking, but and those two bears, I just they look like they had been through some stuff.
Maybe that's why they moved into her forest, so they could learn magic to hide.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Or at least learn some new news.
They learned how to hide.
Yeah, there you go.
That's why they're extinct. They're not actually extinct. They're just magic now.
Yeah, well, they're discovering new species all the time. Some version of a dodo might pop up someplace.
Sure, yeah. I liked that when she leaves, the first person she comes across tries to capture her, mistaking her for a white mare, like the butterfly said. But I liked that she was like horribly insulted.
Okay, so her Winnie, like her, I guess her Winnie, that was the most weird thing. To that point, that was the weirdest thing about this movie. It's like that just sounds like such a strange, and I suppose being a unicorn, it wouldn't have a horse's whinny, but that was so weird to me.
I wonder what they recorded to get the noise.
Honestly, it kind of sounded like the person doing the voice acting a little bit. So maybe they had, I don't know, maybe they combined like that person's voice, or did they had them do it and then did something else to it? I mean, early 80s synth, you have to love.
Yeah, there was a lot of that.
Yes.
So she gets away from this insulting person and she decides that if this guy can't see what she truly is, maybe the other unicorns aren't actually gone. Nobody can see them as unicorns. They're probably just like hiding in plain sight. So she keeps going. There's another music video break here.
I wonder how far she goes, because she like travels through basically 4 seasons worth of stuff.
I want to know exactly how long the time frame for this movie is, because they also lived at King Haggard's castle for a long time.
It
like
seemed
there's
like
multiple seasons happening there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the time frame of this movie, well, it goes by pretty quick. I would say it's probably at least a year, if not 2.
Yeah. Can you imagine just like standing on the balcony every single day for like a year?
Not really, no.
Me neither. At least change your balcony so you got different perspectives.
Well, he gets a different perspective at the end, so.
True. Oh, yeah, a little bit. Now, spoilers. You're jumping way ahead of yourself, Jonathan.
Well, after the next America song, she comes to Mommy Fortuna's Midnight Carnival. And there's a sign that says Creatures of Night Brought to Light, which it's apparently a carnival filled with all sorts of magical creatures. But the unicorn later realizes that none of them are magic except for one.
Mm-hmm.
They're all just disguised. Like it's a regular animal that she's enchanted so that the people who come to the carnival think that they're seeing a magical animal.
And they're super pitiable. Like there's a poor old lion without teeth. There's a monkey with like a twisted foot.
Mm-hmm.
There's some, I don't remember. I don't think there was anything with the snake, but
there was a drag. Was the snake the dragon?
I think the snake was the dragon. There was a manticore, which was the lion, and then the satyr was the monkey.
Yeah.
The voice cast of this was such a, like, they had some big names for this.
Yeah, more than I even realized. I remember from when I was a kid that Angela Lansbury played Mommy Fortuna, because I remember thinking that was so weird that sweet grandmotherly Angela Lansbury, who played Mrs. Potts and was so adorable, was this hideous witch.
Well, even just like they have these massive actors, but they're playing these roles that are tiny. Like Keenan Wynn played the harpy. So really...
that was so random.
I know.
Because I looked up he's not a pirate, the guy in the woods, and that was also Keenan Wynn.
Cully, Captain Cully.
Yeah, so I looked him up just to see, because I recognized the voice. I was like, what? Really? That's because I know him from like old Disney movies, because he was in so many. Like he played like Alonzo Hawk in like several.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's like a big old Disney movie person. I was like, really? That's who and then it said, and he also played the harpy. And I was like, what?
Well, even Paul Frees, like
and he played the tree.
Yeah. Which again, it's like you've got these looking at Paul Frees's his videography, he played a lot of Rankin Bass stuff, so it makes sense.
Okay.
But it almost feels like it should be
him as Professor Ludwig von Drake from Disney cartoons, the crazy old scientist duck.
No, agreed. And he played like the voice of Jack Frost in Frosty's Winter Wonderland. He was in The Hobbit, Nestor. He's been in a lot of stuff, like as far as voice work. And it's just, again, you've got these, it almost feels like they should be under like additional voices because their part is so small.
Yeah, there's, aside from like the main 3 or 4 characters, everybody else is almost a bit part, but they're like still important.
Yeah, no, agreed,
So it's
agreed.
hard to say that they're a cameo. It's kind of interesting that they got so many big names. And some of them I found out from watching the behind the scenes stuff. Like some of the people were like begging to be part of this because they had read the book.
Really?
Like I think Jeff Bridges was begging to be in it in some capacity because he loved the book. And then I think also I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation, Renee Aubergenois.
Oh, I loved his role in this one, like the skeleton. Oh
Yeah.
my god, I think he's probably my favorite, one of my two favorite characters in this.
I feel like I remembered that character, but I had forgotten most about it. And I feel like I've seen another similar character because I think we were talking about this movie last year sometime, and I remembered a scene with a skeleton drinking wine, but I remember the wine falling down through the bones. That did not happen in this. So I think I'm mixing it up with something else. But I had forgotten how hilarious the skeleton was. So even though I had forgotten his scene specifically, I really liked what I had forgotten. Like he's
Yeah.
hilarious.
Oh, he does a great job. Like of all the characters, he's one of the most animated and enjoyable.
Yeah.
Well, I know that
He
I
was
know. Oh, good.
really into his character.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and Christopher Lee voiced the obviously his role as Haggard, but he also did the German version too when they dubbed it over.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense because I just watched the behind the scenes stuff, so that's why I keep referring to it. It's fresh in my memory. But they were talking about how the film, in a way, bombed in the U.S., but it may not have. Oh, I can come back to that. But then they were talking about how when it went to Germany, it performed how they had been hoping it would perform in the US. Like it
Oh,
became massive in Germany.
wow.
And they talked about going to the premiere with Christopher Lee. And I was thinking to myself, I can see why they would have the writer and director to a premiere in another country. But like to have a voice actor, that didn't make a whole lot of sense because like did they not dub it? But if Christopher Lee did the voice in German as well, that makes sense
Hmm.
because they didn't say that in the behind the scenes.
No, and I just I'm just looking at the Wikipedia page here, and it's just saying he was fluent in German, so he also voiced Haggard in the German dub. So
Okay, but yeah, in what the reason I say that it sort of bombed in the U.S. was because in a way it did because after they made the movie, they were trying to find a distributor, and nobody wanted this film for some reason. Like nobody
wow.
would take it. They finally got it picked up by Jensen Farley Pictures, which nobody knows what that is. Like they hardly released anything, but the I don't remember exactly how it went, but the film had been out for not very long, like just a couple weeks or maybe a month or two. I
Hmm.
don't remember, a very short time, and it was actually picking up speed. Like they released it in I think 600 theaters, and it like almost sold out. It was one of the number one films in the country based on percentages of like how many theaters were showing it.
Hmm.
So like other movies were outperforming it monetarily, but like if it had been in as many theaters and done as well as it had in the first 600, it would have been raking in millions of dollars.
Wow. I think I saw that it ended up making around 6 or 7 million, and its budget was like two.
Okay.
So it wasn't it made money, just not a lot.
Well, part of that has to do with the rest of the story
Sorry about
is
that.
because the next I don't know if it was the next week or the next like round, they expanded into more theaters and it stayed at the percentage that it was. Like it was get bringing in just as much money in all of the theaters that it expanded to.
Wow.
So it was actually going up. Like most movies, they're out for a week and it just starts going down as more and
Hmm.
more people have seen it. But this one was going up. And then Jensen Farley Pictures went bankrupt.
Oh, no.
So the theaters that already had The Last Unicorn just kept showing it, but they now did not have to send money to a company because the company didn't exist anymore.
Oh no.
So like the people who like Variety, who reports like the theater takings, like how much it's doing, they get that from the distribution companies. But if the distribution company doesn't exist and the theaters aren't sending them the money and telling them how many people are going to it, it's not recorded.
Right.
So all of these theaters kept showing The Last Unicorn, but they were keeping all of the money for themselves because they didn't have anybody to send
They
it
could.
to.
Oh my God.
So they don't know how long The Last Unicorn was being shown in theaters because the theaters basically had the option to show it as long as they wanted. And
Wow.
he told a story about meeting somebody who told them that their parents met at a showing of The Last Unicorn, and they told them when it was, and it was the next year.
Wow.
Like months after the original debut, and it was still showing in that theater. It has not stopped being shown.
Wow.
So this movie is more popular than anybody knows because there's no actual way to have a record of how popular it was.
Right. Oh, I'm just looking here, and it says the movie was released November 19th of 82, and they went defunct in December 30th of 83. I don't know what that means. Like they could have filed before that point, and maybe the court case took that long. I'm not sure, but
yeah, I'm not sure. I'm just repeating what they were talking about in the behind the scenes.
And that makes sense. I mean, if it's drawn people in and they're enjoying it, I mean, word of mouth is massive.
Mm-hmm. And this has all the markings of a movie that would have been popular at that time, like the other dark animated films of that era.
Oh, 100%. I mean, there's no doubt. Like this feels like an 80s like an early 80s movie. It looks like an early 80s movie. The soundtrack, the story, all of it. You know, especially if it's on after a popular kids book. Totally, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. I feel like if a different company had made this movie, it would probably be like Snow White, Cinderella,
Agreed.
Sleeping Beauty, one of those movies that like everybody has seen and everybody knows about. And a lot of people have seen this, but it's not nearly to the level of like Disney's most popular films.
I mean, I remember seeing this throughout time, actually. Wherever you saw, VHS or DVD or Blu-rays, there'd always be The Last Unicorn, thereabouts. So it's been out, in some way, shape, or form, throughout. And maybe that's just like you see it's the unicorn on the front kind of, I don't know, draws you in, I guess. Or know the title. Like I've never seen it, but I know the title. So maybe that, it's like seeing a car and then you see that car everywhere. It's kind of that aspect.
It could be, yeah.
But
for me, I don't think I ever saw it anywhere except for that tape from the Disney Channel. So it was one of those things where like, I don't know, like I maybe felt like I discovered something that nobody else knew about.
Oh no,
it's like
understood.
I didn't, like the library didn't have it. Like the library is where back then where I knew where to find movies. Like we didn't go to like the video store or anything. We just went to the library. Right. So if the library didn't have something, I wouldn't have known about it.
No, growing up, I was the same. It was, I mean, the convenience store in town had some movies, but yeah, if you wanted anything of substance, you went to the library and they kept a really good selection on hand. So
yeah, because back then we didn't even go to the theater. We waited until the library got something before we watched it.
Yeah.
Because I remember like when a new movie would come to VHS or DVD, we would go in and ask about like if they were going to get it. And then when they did get it, we would make sure we got our names on the waiting list so we would see it.
Nice.
Because a lot of times if you waited till it was on the shelf, you were going to be waiting a long time.
Oh, yeah. And that makes sense. There's normally only one copy, and there was a lot of people that had an interest to see it.
Anyway, where were we?
Tangent.
Yeah, really.
We were with Mama Fortuna's
Oh, yes.
Midnight Creatures, or Midnight Carnival.
Yes. So the unicorn is captured by Mommy Fortuna, who puts a sleep spell on her and gives her a second horn so that normal people can see her, because normal people just see a horse. So she puts a magical second horn on her so they see the magical horn.
It's a bad looking horn too. It doesn't look very interesting.
It looks like one of those old, like, I don't know, is a saber the right word? Like a curved sword.
To some extent, yeah.
That's what I thought when I saw it.
Yeah.
I liked how when they're talking about the different creatures, Ruck, the little hunchback guy, when he's talking about the dragon, he says its inside is an inferno, but its skin is so cold that it burns. It speaks 17 languages badly and is subject to gout. Which is so random.
Well, if you're going to describe a dragon, that's the gout part at least is probably pretty accurate.
So this is where the unicorn meets Schmendrick the magician, who is apparently a bad magician. He sort of knows how to do magic, but he's not good at it. And basically, he's just being used to entertain the sightseers before they go to the carnival.
Well, and at one point, he describes himself as a 2-bit pickpocket.
Oh, I missed that.
Well, that's a little bit later when he goes to once we find out like his true intent.
Okay. After we see all the fake animals that we talked about before, there's also the harpy, whose name is Solano, which is kind of random.
It's actually a creature in Greek mythology, like it is the harpy in Greek mythology. So it was encountered by Odysseus.
So, like, this is supposed to be like a specific harpy?
Well, it's based off of that one. It's like calling your main circus act guy Hercules, or your strongman Hercules. It's kind of that same feel, I think.
Okay.
That's what I'm guessing. Like, I think they were just saying that the inspiration for the harpy's name was specific to Greek mythology.
Okay. I guess I'm not really up on my harpy mythology. So.
Oh, that's okay. It was just in the trivia. I know a little bit of Greek mythology, but nowhere near that much.
I know Hercules from
there you
Disney.
Go. Hercules.
So Schmendrick is talking about the harpy, and he says that it's going to escape any day now, but he doesn't want them to be around when the harpy escapes, because basically the harpy is going to kill them. Mm-hmm. And he wants to help the unicorn escape before the harpy does. And then you also have Ruck talking about the harpy to Mommy Fortuna, and he's like begging her to get rid of it. And he says the harpy thinks about what she's going to do to them every night. And Mommy Fortuna says no, she's not going to let it go, because no other witch in the world holds a harpy captive, and none ever will. And basically admits that she knows she's going to be killed eventually by this harpy, but she wants that. Like, she just because she captured it, and she likes the fact that she's the only person who ever captured a harpy. So if that's how she's going to die, that's how she's going to die.
I mean, that's taking your life in your own hands in that respect, or your fate in your own hands.
Uh-huh.
For whatever that's worth.
No, yeah. And Mommy Fortuna later is talking to the unicorn. And I like the way a lot of lines in this are worded. Her speech to the unicorn, I don't have the whole speech written down, but she had a line here about the unicorn was out hunting for her own death, and she knows where it is and what awaits her. And she's basically talking about the Red Bull, but I liked how she put that. And there's a few other lines throughout the movie that are worded similarly. Like, I don't want to say they're like poetic, but they're kind of poetic.
Right. They drop what, like, they basically tell you what's coming, but they don't tell you what's coming.
Yeah, kind of. And I don't remember all she says, but basically she's telling the unicorn that she should be thanking her for protecting her from King Haggard and the Red Bull by keeping her locked in a cage. Because the Red Bull and or King Haggard, we don't know what's happened yet, but if she were to go there, she would meet the same fate as all the other unicorns.
Those poor unicorns.
So the wizard comes back and he tells the unicorn that he just pretends to be a clumsy fool so that Mommy Fortuna will not know what he's really capable of. But even then, he's not that great because he ends up having to use keys after his spells fail to free the unicorn.
Mm-hmm. One other real quick fun thing. So he befuddles Rook,
Mm-hmm.
the little helper guy, with a riddle. And the riddle is, why is a raven like a writing desk?
Yes.
So we have a connection to Alice in Wonderland.
Yes. I love that he was so confused by that. Like, I don't even think that riddle has an answer. I feel like I read that Lewis Carroll just wrote that just to write it. He didn't actually have an answer.
Nice.
Because a lot in Alice in Wonderland is kind of nonsense, so that just kind of fits right in.
I bet you people have tried, though, to figure out
probably
what the answer is.
But yeah, he frees her, and then Ruck comes in, and Schmendrick takes him down while the unicorn runs away. But then the unicorn decides to free everybody else, including the harpy. And yeah, that doesn't go very well because the harpy first tries to attack the unicorn, but then Mommy Fortuna comes in and she's dead now.
Yep.
She's
R.I.P.
immediately taken out by the harpy, and she's basically laughing as she dies because she's just happy that she had a harpy for a time, I guess.
Oh yeah. Well, and she died the way that she wanted to die. Being ripped to shreds by a harpy.
Schmendrick tries to get the unicorn to run away, and she tells him that they should just go and not look back and not run, because if you run from anything immortal, it attracts their attention. And
I really like that line. I thought that was really cool.
And it's a good piece of mythology, I guess. I don't know if it's based on anything, but even if it's not, I like that he thought of it to write it into this world.
Agreed. It is very cool.
And part of me thought it was funny, but it's also kind of sad that as they're walking away, I don't remember if they look back, but the camera does, and you see that the harpy took out Rook as well. Like, I kind of feel bad for him, but kind of not.
Were they like mother-son, or was he just a helper? I guess he calls her mommy, but that's because that's technically her name. So
yeah, I guess that's more of a title than a, because everybody calls her Mommy Fortuna, as far as I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're dead, and Schmendrick is kind of upset about the whole thing, like how she died, but the unicorn, she doesn't seem to care. I like how nonchalant she was. Like, she's like, she chose her fate long ago.
And truly she did. Like, she said it a couple times. But yeah, that's, well, and that goes to show you the immortal way that unicorns, were portrayed. They didn't, even though she returned to help Schmendrick, there wasn't like the, I don't feel bad. Very logical.
Yeah. I don't want to say that she's kind of alien in that way, but it seems kind of an alien way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just how unicorns are, apparently.
Yep.
And this is where she also says that she has no regrets and she can't regret. She can feel sorrow, but it's not the same thing. And she's telling Schmendrick about the Red Bull and her quest to find the other unicorns, and he's begging to come with. And she has another line here that I loved. When he's begging to go with her, she says she agrees that he can join her, but she wishes he'd asked for some other reward. And he says something like she can't give him what he truly wants. And she agrees, saying she cannot make him a true magician. And he's like, that's all right, don't worry about it. And she says, I'm not. That cracked me up. I'm not.
Yeah, she's almost, in human terms, she would almost be like above everything.
Kinda, yeah.
Or aloof. Yeah, that's the term, aloof.
Yeah. So they keep going. They're nearing the castle, but they're interrupted by a band of outlaws. including the one voiced by Keenan Wynn. And the unicorn goes to hide, but Schmendrick is captured. And there was a bunch of weird and funny lines in this scene where they're at the camp and they're talking about rat soup again. And apparently this is the third night in a row, and all of the nights the soup was made with the same rat.
But yet, Captain Callie is the greatest robber ever in the great tradition of Robin Hood.
I think according to him, anyway.
Yeah, well, that's always the case.
Yes.
Large ego, lesser skill.
In this scene, you're also introduced to Molly Grew, who I'm not sure if she's supposed to be his girlfriend, but he always referred to her as Love. So I don't know. After they leave, he's not spoken of again, so they weren't that close, apparently.
Yeah. He is referred to, like, looking over Wikipedia, she's referred to as his lover, but again, could be like just a term, like if you talk English, a lot of people refer to the people around them as love.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of how I was taking it.
Yeah. Because she definitely, she doesn't take crap from him. She, she calls him out on a lot of stuff. I actually thought they were married at first because of the way that she called him out.
At the very first, that's kind of what I thought. But then I realized later, no, he's probably just calling her love because, it's an English term. So
right. Well, and she's the only woman amongst several men. So,
Yeah. But yeah, Schmendrick is able to sweet talk his way out of being a captor or a captive. And he's praising the captain, pretending that he's heard of him. And Molly is not having any of this. And she's says something like slit his wizard, basically calling for them to kill him. But then he says that she's his beautiful companion. And she's like, oh, well, maybe he does know something. So he's ingratiated himself into this group. And I don't know if I misheard this or not. I should have put on subtitles, but it sounded like Captain Colley offered him a taco.
That's what I thought too. Unless a taco is it sounds like taco, but it's actually something else specific to whatever that was.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought that was hilarious if it was actually what he was offering him.
Well, it's a rat taco. They use the same rat to make all their tacos for the past 3 nights.
And the soup, so it was a soggy taco.
Oh, yeah, that's not good. Well, and then they're when Schmendrick is first accepted, they're like, Molly, put more water into the soup. And she's like, what'd you say? It's literally sweat soup?
Something like it's thinner than sweat already.
Oh, yeah, that's it. A taco.
But yeah, the captain is bragging and he's telling the minstrel that he should sing them a song about his adventures. But Molly wants a song about Robin Hood instead, which apparently infuriates the captain, who has something against Robin Hood. It's like Robin Hood doesn't exist. And I wasn't really sure exactly what was happening in this scene, because at first I thought that the unicorn was doing this, but then it's kind of made clear that it was Schmendrick just not knowing what he was doing later.
Right. Or was it the unicorn helping his magic along?
It could have been, but even in the behind the scenes stuff, they were talking about this scene and how Schmendrick was not knowing what he was doing.
Oh, okay.
So even if the unicorn was helping him, it's still at least partly him.
Right.
And he just has no idea how to use magic. But he's basically calling magic to do as it will. And then Robin Hood and Maid Marian come in, but they're kind of ghostly visions instead of the real thing. And everybody in the camp is enchanted by them, and they chase them off, following them into the woods. And everybody's gone except for the captain and one henchman. And he's upset about this because he's lost everybody now. So he captures Schmendrick and tie him to a tree and say they'll be back in the morning. I'm not really sure why they didn't just off him right there, but whatever.
You don't want to kill someone on an empty stomach.
I gotta go find something more than a taco and rat soup, apparently.
Well, the two don't really pair that well together, if we're being honest.
But then Schmendrick does some other sort of magic, and this tree comes to life and is in love with him for some reason.
And she reminds me of like Mae West. Like she's got the boa and the fancy like flowers that kind of could be jewels and stuff. She's very busty.
Yes, and his face is like trapped in her cleavage.
Yes.
And she's almost smothering him, talking about how she loves him so much. And I'm not sure if like his magic gave her a personality or if the trees have a personality and this just brought it out. I'm thinking way too hard about this whole scene. But she's in love with him and he's talking about, oh great, now I'm engaged to a Douglas fir.
That was such a good line.
And he calls for the unicorn to help him. And she comes running up and the tree is like enraged about the unicorn's presence. She's like yelling that she can't have him. And then there's a storm that I'm not sure where it came from. It seemed like the tree was causing the storm.
That's what I thought, but
there's a lot with magic in this movie that I just don't understand. And I just have to remind myself this is a fairy tale.
In the words of Mystery Science Theater 3000, just to repeat to yourself, it's just a show. We should really just relax.
Yeah, kind of. Pretty much. But the unicorn ends up freeing him and the tree turns back into a tree and the storm goes away. So they're fine now.
Hooray.
I should also note here, I'm looking at the Wikipedia page. They talked about this in the behind the scenes stuff. They said that in the movie, I don't know who this is, Nellie Bellflower. They said that she voiced a character that was eventually cut from the movie, but she ended up still getting credit. But the credit is wrong because she's credited as the tree. But that they said that I think it was Paul Frees that did the tree, not Nellie Bellflower.
Okay.
So she's listed on Wikipedia as doing the tree, but in the behind the scenes stuff, they said that she voiced a character that got cut from the movie, but she ended up getting a credit in the movie.
There was a princess that comes up at the end of the book that was cut. Like they animated it and everything, but then it got cut. So that's probably what was cut. I would bet.
It might have been. They keep going, but then they run into Molly Grew in the forest again, and she's shocked to see the unicorn. And I'm not sure exactly what this whole scene was supposed to mean, because she begins weeping, demanding to know why the unicorn didn't visit her when she was younger. She had some really good lines in this, so I like the scene, even though I'm confused by some of it. But she's like, how dare you visit me when I am this? Basically she's talking about like, why did you come see me when I'm old? Yeah. Rather than when she was young and wanted to see a unicorn. So I'm not sure why she was so upset about the unicorn waiting. Like, not that she was waiting with intent to hurt her feelings, but like I was mildly confused by this, but I liked the sentiment, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and Molly's character, she's another one that I really enjoyed, throughout the course of the movie. Mm-hmm. She has that sense of kind of an every person. My guess is like in there, because it felt like it needed a little bit of backstory or something like that. But I would imagine it's like the unicorn kind of represents like a dream thing when you're a kid. It's like that desire to see something magical. Because she looked like she had lived pretty roughly. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure there's that element of, where was my miracle? Where was my magic when I was younger?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of
That's
thing.
Kind of what I was figuring, but it was one of those things where I felt like maybe if I read the book, this would make more sense. So she stops crying and says that she forgives the unicorn, which is nice of her, I guess, even though the unicorn didn't actually do anything to her. Right.
Or at least that one specifically, it's like saying, well, a brunette person broke my heart, or brunette-haired person broke my heart. You're a brunette-haired person, but I forgive you for this random other brunette-headed person that broke my heart.
Yeah, something like that. After this, Molly insists on going with them, and Schmendrick does not like this idea, but then she says that they're going in the wrong direction, and I guess he figures if she knows where they're going, she might as well come.
You almost expect like a wah 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 kind of a sound when she says that.
But yeah, they're getting close, and this is another thing where it's like, how do you know this? Because Schmendrick says that the bull lives in the caverns below the castle and roams at night. There's a lot of things that somebody just knows, and it's not explained why they know it.
Yeah, that was odd. And maybe it's a magic that he has that allows him to see that. But if that's the case, why couldn't they figure out a way to get down there? Because there's clearly caves underneath the castle.
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things where I thought about it for a while and was like, whatever. It's not worth thinking about too much. It's a fairy tale.
Exactly.
And there's another music break here with another America song. And at the end of that song, the castle starts glowing and shooting out red fire, which becomes the bull and begins chasing the unicorn. And they realize that it's not trying to kill the unicorn. It's just trying to make her go towards the castle. And Molly starts begging Schmendrick to do something. And he thinks he can't because he doesn't have very good magic, but he tries anyway. And the unicorn gets transformed into a human. And the bull just leaves.
He's like, I don't see a unicorn. Oh, well. Yeah.
It's another one of those things where just accept.
Yeah.
It's fairy tale logic.
Yeah. It's like a cat with a laser pointer. It loses track of it and it goes, whatever.
Yeah,
okay.
kind of. Pretty much exactly like that.
I lost interest.
Yeah. I found it kind of ironic that Molly was begging him to do literally anything to save the unicorn, but then she's like horribly upset when she finds out that she became a human. It's like, she saved her life.
And the way the switch flips on that, it's just like that. There's no hesitation.
And it's also more ironic later when she says that she should leave her as the human.
Yeah, they're very back and forth on their beliefs about that. But even like the way that you were talking about stuff that people know, and I suppose Molly seems like she knows a lot about unicorns to start with, but she's holding the unicorn's human body, and she's like, "Oh, she'll go crazy in a human body. She won't survive." She goes on and on and on, and the things that she's talking about, they don't really happen.
Yeah, there are some ill effects, but not the ones that she's talking about. She doesn't go mad. She ends up kind of just having amnesia at certain points.
Yeah, and she kind of forgets, but even that's kind of here and there. And I'm sure if she's kind of like going from like a unicorn inside to a human inside, you would have that kind of like moments of clarity. But, and again, fairy tale logic, but it's still, there's bits that just don't really work.
I did like her reaction, though. It's one of those things that, again, it's like, it's not poetry, but it's kind of poetic. I just liked how it was worded when she's upset that she's now human because she says she can feel the body dying around her.
Oh, yeah.
And she wishes that he just left her to the bull.
That was a cool part.
Schmendrick defends his choice to use the magic and says that at least this way they can actually get into the castle, because they wouldn't be able to even get close if she was a unicorn. But maybe as a human, they can actually get in. She must kind of agree because they keep going, and she doesn't demand to be changed back after this.
Yeah. She was still pretty out of it, though, at that point, too.
Yeah. I mean, she's kind of out of it for a lot of the rest of this.
Yeah, very true.
In different ways. She's just kind of only half there, especially when she starts getting amnesia symptoms.
Yeah. Did you find it strange that Schmendrick went from doubting that he can do it? And I suppose a positive reinforcement of something working will change your heart. But like he goes from, I can't do it, to doing it. And then he's like, I called the magic and someday I'll be able to, make it do my will. Like he almost goes a little evil.
Yeah, he did seem a little bit out of character there. He did seem like he was getting a bit too full of himself.
Right.
I suppose it does make sense because he actually did do magic. but he did seem to switch a little bit too far.
Yeah. And then he kind of backs off like, oh, well, I am just a vessel for the magic. He goes from one extreme to the other and then kind of ends up somewhere in the middle. But I don't know, not knowing the book, that might be kind of how he deals with it. Because I'm sure there is that after power high of, I did the thing. And,
After this, they end up getting to the castle, and there's two guards, and Schmendrick introduces them, and he introduces the unicorn as the Lady Amalthea, and he says he's not going to tell them why they're there. He's only going to speak to King Haggard himself. And the guards lead them all the way through the castle, and they hear these horrifying noises like wind howling, roaring, and the guards are like, oh, that's nothing. It's just the bull.
Well, if you lived over top of the bull every day, it probably would become commonplace. It's like having a train out back your house or something.
I suppose.
A train runs by, 5 times an hour, 22 hours a day, but get used to it.
And they get upstairs, they get to the throne room, and Schmendrick doesn't believe this is actually the throne room. It's all dark and filthy and covered in cobwebs. And he demands that they take him straight to King Haggard. And then the guards take off their helmets, and it is King Haggard, as well as his son, Prince Lear. And I'm like, why did he pretend to be the guard? Like, do they just spend their days standing out front of their castle pretending to be guards?
Maybe it was pretend to be a guard day, and then the next day it's pretend to be servant day, and then the next day is actually be king and prince day. And maybe they're just low on money and they don't have the funds to keep staff.
Well, he talked later like he had only 4 people in his employ, but I didn't see anyone else.
Well, you had the magician and you had the cat.
Oh, that's true. I suppose the magician would be one of them. Does the cat count? I mean, it's revealed later that the cat can talk. Maybe they're paying the cat something. I don't know.
I mean, you could pay him in mice, really. Tuna or something.
What was with that cat anyways? It was like he was a pirate.
I know. And I expected more to come from the cat. Like the first time, because I watched this a couple times, and the first time I watched it, I was paying attention, but then my attention went away and came back, and it's like, okay, the cat showed up. Is the cat the magician? What the heck's got like the
That's
one
what I thought at first, but he doesn't. He's just a cat.
Yeah, just like, okay, it's just a really piratey cat.
I mean, I guess if this is a world where unicorns can exist, then pirate cats can exist too.
Oh yeah. I really wanted to hear him start singing, The Pirate's Life for Me, or, something, some kind of a sea shanty, type of thing. I was rather disappointed.
I liked that he had a little peg leg.
That was really funny. And then he had like the giant earring. Didn't he have an eye patch too?
Yes, and the eye patch served no purpose because he put it on one eye and then switched it to the other. But yeah, they're talking with King Haggard, and his excuse for them being there is that they want to offer themselves to be servants to him. And this is where he says he already has 4 people working for him. That's all he needs. He also says he already has a magician, and he sees no reason to replace him. And
he's a magician's magician.
Yes, he's like an expert magician, allegedly. We don't see a whole lot from him, but
yeah.
Anyways, Molly pipes in and says that she has a reason why he could be replaced. He doesn't make him happy. And the king is like, well, what makes you say that? She's like, just look at you.
And that does become a theme over the rest of the movie.
Yeah, it's kind of like his whole reason for anything that he does. And his whole reason for being evil is just he wasn't happy and he's trying to find something that will make him happy. So he calls in the magician and says he's being replaced. It's like instantly. So like her argument was sound enough that it was like, okay. And he tells him that he's not made him happy. He says a master magician has not made him happy. So now he's going to try an incompetent one. And the magician he's furious at first. And he's acting like he's going to conjure up some horrible spell. But then he notices that the unicorn's forehead is glowing where her horn used to be, and he starts laughing. And this is another one of those lines that I really liked. He tells the king he's glad he's not him because he's let his doom in through the front door, and it will not be leaving that way. And then
That's a very
he's
good
gone.
line. Yeah.
Yes.
He also I love the fact that Lear says that he'll write him a reference.
Yes. That cracked me up as well. After this, the king notices that the unicorn, I should start calling her Lady Amalthea. She's not a unicorn in this, she's a human. But he notices her looking out the window at the sea, and he says something about he's not able to look at much very long except for the sea. And then she turns around and he looks into her eyes, and the animals from the beginning show up, and he's demanding to know why he can't see himself. And he's like freaking out about this. But the prince talks him down, and the king leaves. He says it doesn't really matter if they're his doom or not. They can stay and do whatever they want.
That was awfully nice of him.
Yeah. You might kill me, but whatever. You can stay.
Yeah, exactly. That place is so, like, I know it's supposed to be like an evil castle and generally not be in great shape, but it is so shabby. Like the windows are all broken, and there's areas of beauty, but then you have all these busted windows, and I can't think it's real comfortable to live there.
It looks like it would be very drafty.
Very.
Especially because it connects to those caverns below.
Exactly. And I'm sure that the bowl doesn't create a lot of extra heat. Or a lot of heat that you can actually use.
Maybe that's why he lives below, though. Maybe he's like the furnace.
That's true. But castles are generally drafty to start with. And having all those busted windows, and dangerously busted windows, to boot.
Uh-huh.
Like there's areas where, they've got all the lovely paintings and sculptures and stuff. And then, right next to that is a giant broke window.
Yeah. I wonder how long the castle has been deteriorating.
Well, and I guess in the book, there was actually supposed to be a town kind of built below the actual castle. And there was a prophecy that said someone from the town was going to be the one that brought about the downfall of the king. So Hagar had conquered the town and took over the castle and stuff, making himself ruler and everything.
Interesting. I kind of wanted them to do another version of this with more of the book and make some things make more sense. But at the same time, it's one of those things where I kind of like this as is, even though it's so weird and some things don't make sense. But I don't know. I kind of want to see somebody else's vision for this, and I want some more backstory.
They actually have had a couple of versions that were supposed to come up. Let's see, where is it here? There was an adaptation plan that's been in developmental hell forever and a day. There was a Broadway show.
Really?
Where is it though?
I wonder how the Broadway show works. Does the cast all get together and sing all the America songs?
There you go. Okay, so in 1988, a stage adaptation of the novel was presented in Seattle. Peter Beagle wrote the script, and it was a musical presented in collaboration with the Pacific Northwest Ballet. In fall 2009, there was a new adaptation presented in Chicago. Let's see. There was a live action adaptation of the original book in development for several years, but it's not known what progress has been made. There's a website talking about a film in production that went up in February of 2006. It's still there as of January 2022, but the website is currently not in service.
Doesn't bode well for that one.
Exactly. There was also supposed to be a second novel. So Peter Beagle wrote all kinds of books kind of built around unicorns. And he wrote one called Two Hearts, or was in the process of writing one called Two Hearts, but it was a short story.
Okay.
It did win a Hugo and a Nebula Award in 2007. There's also a comic book based on The Last Unicorn beginning in April 2010. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, very much so. But again, that's kind of where it ends.
Well, they'll probably do a remake someday.
I'm sure
everything gets remade eventually.
Yeah, that's for sure.
For better or worse.
You are correct, sir.
Anyways, at this point, there is another music video break, and I
And it's
liked
like
this.
we're in the 80s or something.
Yeah, I liked the song here. It's like about the sea.
Very much.
As the song is playing, time is passing. So, like, they're all settling into basically living at this castle. Molly becomes a cook. Schmendrick is now like the magician, entertaining the king with all his little magic tricks. And this is where you first see the cat with the peg leg and an eye patch. At first, you just think he's a regular cat until later. Apparently, he talks, and there's no explanation given for that. He
Nope.
just talks.
Yep. Well, I mean, if you're a pirate cat, you kind of have to talk because you have to explain your scenario of how you got to be a pirate cat, I would think.
He needed to do that then.
Yes. I mean, I would even accept like a side, a side story about Pirate Cat.
So would I. They could have done like a little animated short.
They could have. Have some American music for it. It'd be great.
During all this, the prince is apparently wanting to do heroic deeds to impress. I don't know if he thinks she's a princess, but he wants to impress her. He loves the unicorn, even though he doesn't know she's a unicorn. He just loves her anyway. He at one point rides out to slay a dragon, but the dragon is a Chinese dragon, which, like, in dragon mythology, Chinese dragons are supposed to be good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the European dragons are the evil ones. So it's kind of weird that he's going out and killing a Chinese dragon.
Could it be? And obviously, Chinese doesn't translate to all of Asian, but could it be because of the Topcraft connection? They just were like, well, we're supposed to have a dragon. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of in that respect.
Because in the behind the scenes stuff, they were talking about like they would send over their ideas and things, directions on things to do. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the people from the studio would have better ideas than they did, and they would go with those. So maybe that's one of them. Maybe
that would make sense.
Maybe they did have a traditional dragon, but even though they're in Japan, maybe they're just more familiar with Chinese dragons, and that's why they did that. And they just like the look. I don't know. That's interesting.
I mean, if you're thinking like, I don't know, you're definitely going to have a more eclectic looking dragon if you went with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then he like presents the head or the tail. Yeah. I'm not even sure exactly what he presents to her, but
a random body part.
Yeah, I'm guessing part of the tail, but it's like this dragon. I mean, did you leave the rest of it for Molly to cook up? I mean, where did it end up?
Yeah, what did he do with the rest of it? They could have eaten it.
Yeah, it probably would have been tasty eating. You get some chopsticks, get a wok going with some stir fry. Could have been delicious.
Stir fry.
Yeah, exactly. Give some to Pirate Cat because he's Pirate Cat.
But yeah, she's not impressed by this random dragon body part, though. So his attempts to impress her don't really work.
Yeah.
And he's talking to Molly about this. And the way he's talking, you can tell they've been there a very long time. Like, I think at this point, it's like winter. I think in the scene before, or maybe it's in a scene coming up, there's like snow falling. Mm. So a long time has passed. They've been living there quite a while.
Right.
He tells Molly that, like, basically he loves her. He just wants to be whatever she needs him to be. He wants her to help her find whatever she came there to find. And Molly goes to talk to the unicorn, but she's started to forget who she is.
Right.
This leads to another song, but this time she's singing it. I think this is the first one like that the characters are singing. Because before this, it's been like just the band America has been singing the song as events happen. This is like the first one where it's like musical style, like she's singing about her plight.
It's really the only one too, isn't it?
Well, the prince has a song later too that she joins in, and it's almost a reprise of this one, but it's his song that she kind of joins in and combines the two songs. But those
like the combining of their hearts.
Kind of, yeah. At the end of the song, she basically says that she needs to find the Red Bull before she completely forgets who she is. Mm-hmm. So Molly is trying to explain to her that Schmendrick is trying to figure out how to find the Red Bull, and the unicorn is kind of dismissive of him at this point. She says she's not expecting any help from him. He's basically turned into King Haggard's personal clown. And Molly is really upset by this. She's like defending him.
Oh yeah, she lays a smackdown. There's no doubt.
Yeah, she says he's doing everything he can. He's doing it for her to keep King Haggard from asking who she is. And the unicorn, she says, "Forgive me," and then runs away crying. And Molly goes back downstairs, and you can hear the Red Bull roaring as she's going. And this is where you find out the cat can talk. Because he's overheard this whole conversation. He knows who the unicorn is, why she's there. And he says that if she stays in the body that she has for too long, she's going to be stuck as a human forever. And Molly doesn't want this to happen. She's begging to know what they need to do. And the cat says that they need to take the king's way down to the Red Bull. And Molly grabs him and demands that he tell her where the king's way is. And he gives her a riddle. And he
Not
says,
a great one either.
No, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I guess that's another thing that you just got to accept because fairy tales. When the wine drinks itself, when the skull speaks, when the clock strikes the right time, only then will you find the tunnel that leads to the Red Bull's lair. So, and like thinking ahead to how they eventually get in there, it's all very random that ended up making sense.
Right. And they make a lot of it happen themselves.
Yeah. So like, is the cat psychic?
You know what? Well, and the cat says that the appearance of, the fact that the unicorn is actually a unicorn and all that other stuff, like, it sees through all of the disguises, which is a very cat-like thing to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another thing. Fairy tale. Just go
exactly.
With it. So then more time passes, and the prince is now trying to court the unicorn with a poem. Her amnesia is getting to the point where she's forgetting who he is, even though she met him after she became a human. And she's like having flashbacks to Mommy Fortuna and the harpy. And she tells the prince that she's always dreaming, even when she's awake. And this is where he has his song. And more time has been passing. So you have scenes all interspersed in here of different things happening. And then Molly and Schmendrick are trying to figure out this riddle. They're like down in this cave, and you could see this skeleton that comes up later, but he doesn't do anything. But they don't get anywhere at this point with the riddle. I'm not sure why this scene comes up, because you have the unicorn is at the top of the castle, and she's watching the prince, and then the king comes in and basically just reveals that this prince is not actually his son. I'm not sure why he decided to tell her this. He just came up, he's like, "Oh yeah, by the way, he's not my son. I found him as a baby." Okay.
And that whole bit does relate back to the story, because like the other part of it was there was a baby abandoned in the square of the town that's supposed to be attached to the castle. And the king comes by and picks up this random baby. And for a while, it makes him happy. But then after that, he goes back to being a miserable old coot.
Okay.
There's more to it, but that's kind of the basic.
Yeah. Okay. But then he also reveals that he knows who she is and what she came there for. And he says that he has them all and she can't have them. And since he didn't say anything specifically, she tells him there's nothing in his castle that she would ever want of his. And then he basically gives her his tragic backstory. Like, basically, he's always been miserable. Nothing's ever made him happy until he saw a unicorn. And then he commanded the Red Bull to round them all up and drive them into the sea.
Which is, your go-to thing. I mean, why would you choose to do anything else? I mean, underlying that, this whole, like the last probably 40 minutes, you do get the sense of loss. There is something deeper to the story as far as this guy that can't find happiness. Nothing brings him joy. And the one thing that brought him joy, as compared to letting it be out in the open where everyone else can enjoy it too, he tries to hoard it for himself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I only deserve to be made happy by this thing.
Yeah. Well, my question is, why is the fact that the Red Bull drove them into the sea, why do they stick around? Because they all live in the ocean near his castle so he can look out and watch them. But why didn't they just swim somewhere else?
Well, and they said that every time they get close to shore, the bull drives them back in
I suppose, but I mean
because
they're
he's
immortal. Couldn't they just swim to swim to
you'd think.
Canada?
I don't know. Maybe their fear of the bull is so great because he comes out every night at I think it's dusk, and so maybe it's that fear of the bull every day after day after day, and then again you apply fairy tale logic.
Yes, yes. I was just gonna say I shouldn't be questioning this too
No,
much.
I think you're very right to question it. I was like, why are they in the ocean? How does that make any sense?
Yeah.
And also their reappearance later, it's like, how does that even work?
I
They're
did
like
think that their
surfing the
reappearance was
waves.
cool though. There's like they're part of the waves.
Oh
It
yeah,
it was a really cool visual.
that was a neat visual. It kind of reminded me of Fellowship of the Ring when the Liv Taylor or Liv what's her name? Aragon's like love. Anyway, they get across the river and then she calls up like the waves
Arwen.
as horses. Arwen, yeah, thank you.
It
She
took me a
calls up
minute.
the waves as horses, and then they like take out all of the bad guys.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Like that kind of reminded me of that.
Yeah. I wonder if they saw the last unicorn and were inspired.
Well, and that might be because I think that is described in the Fellowship of the Rings book. So it could have been something that was in their version of the Lord of the Rings. And they
Maybe
just
Peter S. Beagle was inspired because he wrote his book probably not too long after Lord of the Rings, maybe
That's
like
possible.
20 years later.
Yeah.
When was Lord of the Rings written?
50s, 40s or 50s. I can look it up
Okay.
quick. Hang on.
The Last Unicorn, I think, was 60s. So
Yeah, it
it
was
wasn't
like
that much later.
62, 68, something like that. Hang on here. 1948 was when Lord of the Rings was first written.
Okay. So maybe 15-ish years.
Yeah.
Anyways, that was a tangent.
Hey, we've already decided that tangents are not bad.
Yeah. And this is kind of relevant.
Yes.
But yeah, he admits all this and then he demands that she tell him who she really is, even though he says he already knows. He wants to hear it from her, or he's going to toss her into the sea with the rest of them. And I'm not sure if I think this is another amnesia thing. Either that or she's lying to try and save herself. She says she does not know what he's talking about. And then he looks into her eyes and sees his own reflection, which to me, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But if the other scene with him wondering why he doesn't see his reflection, I guess this is a callback to that. And just, I don't really understand how magic works in this world. That's supposed to be obvious that, well, obviously he can't see himself. And now, obviously, he can. So she must be a human.
I was going to
Okay.
say, isn't it more of a thing that like her transition from being a unicorn in a human body to being a human in a human body? Like, I think that's kind of the
Yeah,
transitional
I think
aspect.
that's
Yeah.
what they're getting at. But the rules of the magic are what
Yeah.
I
They don't
guess.
really, they really don't. I mean, most of the, I guess what you'd call the physics of the world, they really don't go into depth as to like how they work very much.
Yeah. Anyway, he sees himself and that stops him. And he doesn't think he's mistaken, but he leaves her up there and says it doesn't matter. The end will be the same either way.
I mean, he's not wrong.
She goes back inside and she's crying, and Schmendrick is trying to comfort her. He tells her not to cry because if she's become human enough to cry like that, he doesn't think he's going to be able to change her back. And they all go down under the caves again together this time. And this is where you meet the skeleton. They hear crazy laughter and find that this skeleton who was lying in there earlier is now alive and is laughing at them. And they've figured out that he has something to do with the riddle. They don't know exactly what. And Molly had asked Schmendrick to bring wine for the other part of the riddle. And he comes in and says all he has is water. And he acts like he's going to turn it into wine, but he's doing it in such a way that the skeleton can't see what's happening. And he's like demanding to know what's going on. The performance of the skeleton is just hilarious.
Oh, it's
I love
amazing.
this skeleton. So he turns around and acts like he's drinking. And I'm wondering, was there even anything in this thing to begin
No,
with?
not
Because
that there was no animation, at least in that respect.
yeah, so he pretends that he drank it all, but he has nothing. So basically they're just trying to trick this skeleton. And the skeleton is demanding that he be allowed to taste this wine. And they're wondering why, because he's a skeleton. Like, you can't taste or smell this. And he's like, but I remember.
And he's adamant about it.
Yes, I love his whole reaction to this. And so they tell him that if he tells them how to get to the Red Bull, they will give him the wine. And he says that all they have to do is just go through this clock that you saw earlier. And that's it. That's how you find the Red Bull. And so they give him this empty jug, and he proceeds to like guzzle nothing. He's just chugging on this empty jug, and like his cheeks get all flushed. And he's like, well, that was the real stuff.
That was so like that was just hilarious. That was such a good part of the movie. Like it's probably my
Yes.
favorite.
I loved that skeleton.
He'd be a great party companion. Like he's the guy you would invite to a party.
I mean, it would be cheap to get it to give him drinks, because you could just
Yeah.
tell him that here's a glass of something.
Pinot Noir, 1872, a good year.
And he would buy it.
Oh yeah, definitely so.
So they all start heading for this clock, but I'm not sure why the skeleton is now furious, and his eyes start glowing red. And he's screaming for King Haggard. He's figured out that she's a unicorn, and I guess I don't know why he cares, but he does.
Yeah, but before that, they also had like he was trying to explain to them that they just need to go through the clock, and they get into this weird thing about time. Like, time, the clock is numbers, but time is something else entirely. Like
it seemed like it was part of the riddle that got cut. I don't know. It felt, because
right,
they were talking about it like it was a riddle, like you had to go through time, but it's a clock, so you're going through time.
right. Yeah, it was like it almost felt like a philosophical thing, but it could have very easily been kind of a variation on the riddle.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I don't know. It's one of those things where it's just like, fairy tale, go with it.
Very
But yeah,
true.
they're like escaping through the clock, and King Haggard is racing down there, and only the unicorn and Molly make it through. Schmendrick is attacked by the king. He's like, they're chasing through the caves, and he eventually does get through the clock, but then the king smashes it to pieces. And I guess it was a magic portal, because now there's no way back into the castle. They have to go out through the caves. But also, somehow the prince got in there, and this is like the most on the nose thing about like just go with it that they had. Like, even though they don't say just go with it, they ask how he got in there, and he just says that he saw where she went and followed. It's like, what? You were not there. We saw this whole thing. You did not follow them in. That makes no sense. But
he
whatever.
was riding on the wings of love, and he just went past everybody faster than anyone could see.
Okay.
And even though we've been given no reason why the unicorn and the prince should have any feelings for each other, they all of a sudden do.
Yeah, because they have this whole conversation about, like, everybody has changed their mind.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't want to be a unicorn anymore. She's in love with the prince, and now Molly wants her to stay a human as well. I guess maybe she's just a romantic and wants them to be a happy couple.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
I'm sure so.
But the prince then changes his mind and says that she needs to be changed back, because her whole point of being there was to rescue the other unicorns. So he's not going to let her stay a human just for him. And he also has this speech about being a hero, which was a little corny, but I thought it was kind of funny, especially later, which I'll get to that later.
Well, and they do, like, even Sorry, my brain keeps shutting off on what the
Schmendrick.
Schmedrick. Thank you. Schmedrick kind of brings up how it's like, they each have their jobs to do, basically, like, and they go back and forth, and then they do the whole happy ending thing. That line was actually pretty cool. How there weren't happy endings because nothing ever truly ends.
Yeah.
I really liked that line. I thought that was cool.
Yeah. So they're having this whole conversation, and Molly accuses Schmendrick of not caring anything about anything except his magic and becoming a real magician. He says he wishes that were true. He wishes he didn't care about anything else, but he does. And then suddenly they're interrupted by the Red Bull, and now he knows. I don't know why he suddenly knows that she's a unicorn, but he does. So they're fleeing through the cave, and the unicorn in human form trips, and the prince leaps between them, and then Schmendrick starts chanting, and the unicorn changes back. She's now a unicorn again. And the Red Bull chases her out of the cave, and the prince is demanding that he do something. Schmendrick says that he can't. Not all the magic in the world can save her now. And Molly's like, well, what good is magic if it can't save a unicorn? And Schmendrick says, that's what heroes are for. And the prince is like, yes, that is what heroes are for. And he charges in, and he's immediately killed. It's not supposed to be funny, but it made me laugh.
Well, it is. Dead. It is. It's like I don't even have a good example or a good side thing, but yeah, no, it is. It's, you don't see him go down, but yeah, he just, you see him, the shot goes to see him run off, and then all of a sudden you see him land back on the beach, dead as a doornail.
Yeah.
It's like, nice job, hero. You really did it well. We're so proud of you.
Yes, that's what heroes are for.
There was another line just a little bit back, and I apologize. It was actually kind of neat. Back when they were in the cave, and I think the unicorn was still in human form, but they're going back and forth talking about what they need to do, and the prince says, I love who I love, and it's kind of a neat line.
Yeah.
And that kind of relates back to what happens later, but
yeah, he basically says that, and then they're trying to reinforce she is a unicorn, and he's repeats it, he's adamant he loves who he loves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a good line too. There's a lot of really good lines in this.
Yeah,
all this is happening, and you also see King Haggard looking down from the castle as all this is playing out below him. And then suddenly the unicorn is enraged at the bull. Even though she's a unicorn again, apparently she still loves this prince, and now he's dead, and she charges at the bull, and for some reason he's now scared of her.
Right.
He switched immediately to being the aggressor now he's afraid of this unicorn, and he backs up into the sea, and he just walks out to sea, and you never see him again.
Right. And she doesn't really do anything. She just kind of there's no
swings her horn at him, and that's
it's
enough,
not even it's not even really that much. It's just kind of oh, well, I'm going to move over here, and then you're going to move over there, and then it's not quite the epic beatdown you would expect to see.
Yeah, I don't know that I would say that this is my biggest problem with this, but he drove thousands of unicorns into the sea, and not a one of them tried to face off with him.
Well, maybe that was the thing that separated it. And again, it's cheesy, but it's fairy tale logic. It's a kid's story to some extent. Maybe the fact that the unicorn had love, she had that thing that gave her courage to do the thing that she wouldn't have had, that set her apart from every other unicorn.
Yeah, that's true. That's probably what they were going for,
I guess, because there's other things that come up later that the whole last unicorn thing does relate in different things all the way to the end.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, she drives him out to sea, and then all the unicorns come back, waves of unicorns rushing to the shore. And yeah, like we said, it looks very cool. I love the visual of the unicorns as waves.
Yeah, that is pretty neat. It's the white foam on top of each wave, and it's just nothing but unicorns.
Yeah.
I'm
So
still just
they,
thinking, how would you even have room for that many unicorns under the water? Because there was like thousands.
well, the sea's pretty big.
Yeah. I know it's a moot point, but I found it kind of funny. It's like, wow.
Yeah. There's so many that they cause an earthquake when they come back because King Haggard, his whole castle falls apart.
Well, let's be honest, the thing wasn't that well constructed to start with.
And if it was, it hasn't been for a while.
I mean, one good tap with a hammer at the right location, and that would have had the same effect.
Basically, yeah. I thought it was weird though, as he's like falling to his doom and he's like screaming, "I knew you were the last." Like, what? You had all the other unicorns. She's not the last. You were just hoarding them all for yourself.
Exactly. The last free unicorn. So he would have said that, but he hit the water before he could say it.
Yeah, and then his castle hit him, so
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
gone now.
Yes.
But all the unicorns are gone now. Molly is crying over the prince's body, and their unicorn comes back, and she seems surprised to see her again and says, "You stayed." And the unicorn bends down and magics the prince back to life.
Yay, happy ending.
For
or
now.
something.
So he wakes up, he thinks he's dreaming again, and then he realizes he was actually dead. He sees the unicorn and she says, "I remember you," and then runs away. So,
Which, is typical for unicorns.
I'm not sure how much time passes, but the prince and Molly and Schmendrick have stayed together for a while, and they're now probably closer to where the unicorn was because everything is green. It seems like it's the same forest from the beginning.
Yep.
And the prince is leaving them. He's wishing that he could see the unicorn one last time to tell her what was truly in his heart. And Schmendrick says that she will remember him. She'll remember his heart when men are fairy tales and books are written by rabbits. And he says, of all the unicorns, she's the only one who knows what regret is. And then I couldn't quite make out what his last line was, but I think he said, because she loved.
I thought, but also love, but you might be right.
Something like that. Basically, she knows regret and love.
Yeah.
Which apparently most unicorns do not.
Right. And that's one of the other things I'm sure that probably makes her the last unicorn, like she's apart from everybody else.
Yeah.
To some extent.
So he leaves and Schmendrick asks Molly to come with him. So I think the assumption here is that they're a couple now.
Yeah, I would agree. Do you think Schmendrick was supposed to be older than what he looked? Because I would have guessed like teenager.
I was thinking of him as like mid-20s.
Yeah.
But he could have been older than he looked. It's hard to tell with that animation style.
That's true.
Everybody has kind of a general weird look to them.
The only people that looked old were like Mama Fortuna.
She was definitely old. There was no mistaking her for a young person.
Agreed. That and the original wizard at the castle.
Yeah. And King Haggard.
Yeah. Yeah, he didn't age gracefully at all.
I guess maybe Schmendrick he's in his 30s and Molly's in her 40s, maybe.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Anyway, I guess they're a couple now, so they're traveling together. But at some point, I'm not sure how much later, it's at night, and the unicorn comes to visit him. Molly, I think she's still asleep at the beginning because she doesn't talk to the unicorn. And she tells Schmendrick that she's happy that he got his wish. He's a true magician now. And I'm not sure why she knows that. It's like he's always had some form of magic, but okay, he's a true magician now. That's fine.
Well, his hat got taller.
Okay. She tells him that she's afraid to go home because she's changed. Since she was mortal once, part of her will always be mortal. And she's not like the other unicorns anymore because no unicorn has ever known what regret is. And she does. And Schmendrick is apologizing for making her mortal. And she basically says it doesn't matter because it was worth it because all the unicorns are back in the world. And she also thanks him for the regret because I think she appreciates her mortality or her scrap of mortality, the regret and love. She thanks him for that anyway. And she tells him goodbye and runs away. And Molly has awoken by that point, and Schmendrick and Molly watch the unicorn leave, and then you get end credits and the main theme again. The end.
Woohoo! Now, the one part that did get cut, and we kind of discussed it a little bit earlier, was the prince was supposed to save a princess, at least as stated by the book.
Okay.
And they had animated it, but it got cut for, I'm not sure if it was cut for time or what, but that way he had his happy ending too. So otherwise, he's got no family. He's got friends, but, he's going to go leave them. So dude's kind of alone in the world.
Yeah, because his adopted dad got crushed by his own castle.
Yep. Which is a hell of a way to go out, I got to tell you.
I wonder if he even knew that he was adopted. Did they even tell him?
I don't think he knew in the book. I think he did find out eventually, because he goes back and the town that's there, he becomes the king of the place.
Okay. Well, I mean, he was adopted, so might as well.
Yeah. It's certainly a thing. Like, it's a really, I can see the appeal of it. As a kid, watching it for the first time as an adult, there's a lot to take in, but there's also that thing about suspension of disbelief and understanding what, like, not trying to make it more than what it is. And we've kind of discussed some of that. Like, we keep saying fairy tale logic and all that kind of stuff. So overall, though, I mean, the music's really good. The voice cast, like Mia Farrow as the unicorn, amazing. Jeff Bridges was great. The lady that played Molly, Tammy Grimes, she was great. Christopher Lee was awesome.
Angela Lansbury was great.
Oh yeah, well, Angela Lansbury is always great.
Yes. Yeah, I feel like a lot of this, if it was a movie made today, I would be a lot more hard on it with all the seeming plot holes. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I saw it when I was a kid, so I'm more easily able to forgive any inconsistencies.
Well, and I think that's fair. I mean, I love Gem and the Hologram as a kid, and like that's the animation on that is terrible, but it's one of those things where I can still look at it and say, man, this animation is terrible, but you still get the warm fuzzies because it's something you grew up with.
Mm-hmm. I think part of what also helps this is I like, even though the animation is not like Disney quality, I really like the animation style. It has a certain 80s charm to it. Plus the soundtrack, it just makes it so unique that even though I can see the flaws as a whole, I really like it.
Yeah, no, I think you make a very good point. And well, first time I watched it, I was in my head, I was very critical of kind of the way that they did the mouth movements and stuff, because just like half the time it felt like it was something overdubbed from some other, it was made in Italy or Japan or whatever, and then it was brought to the States and dubbed over. But besides that, like you say, I mean, the unicorn's animation, both as a unicorn and as a human, it's really unique. The fact that her human form has a different outline, like she stands out from everybody else. And they did a really good job to make her almost glow, I would say.
Yeah.
And not in just the little effects that they add to like her mane or hair when she has it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And as we talked about, and again, you're following the book, but it doesn't have a happy ending. It's not just, they ride off into the sunset as, happy-go-lucky couple. It does, it ends the way something real life would. The unicorn goes back to being a unicorn. The Schmendrick and Molly end up together and happy, but the prince kind of ends up on his own. He loses his dad. There's a lot of bittersweet to what this is. It almost, again, it does have that Lord of the Rings thing where it ends and things end well, but the world is never the same. For the unicorn, just like Frodo, she can never go back to what she was.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about that too. It does have a sort of Frodo ending for her.
Mm-hmm.
Like life can never be the same because of the journey that she went on.
Exactly. She gained so much insight, but by gaining that insight, she kind of separates herself from everybody else.
Yeah. I
And
wonder
it was
how
not
much of that was inspired by Lord of the Rings.
I don't know. I'm sure some of it was, I mean, you talk to anyone that kind of grew up in that era. And I mean, even though they didn't have the movies and the books can be difficult to read, there is a massive
That's an
amount.
understatement.
Oh, yeah, I know. But there is that it is high fantasy, and it sets a benchmark of what good fantasy can be.
Yeah.
In a time when fantasy was still, like, as far as a genre goes, it was still kind of finding its footing.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you look at fantasy as a genre separate from sci-fi, separate from everything else.
Yeah, it kind of set the tone for most of what came after. Like
yeah.
anything that you have today has some sort of inspiration from Lord of the Rings.
Oh, agreed. I mean, you could say the same thing of Star Wars. Anything that we have that's based in outer space can draw inspiration from a lot of like what Star Wars was, even if it's just you grew up loving Star Wars, so you wanted to make your own variation on something set in space.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you want to let people know where they can find you if they want more from you?
All right, well, you can find me here on YouTube at Trivial Theater. You just type that in and you can find me. I do a wide variety of random, obscure, and straight up bad movie reviews, as well as a wide variety of collabs with really fun people where we make fun of, in a loving way, various movies. You can also find me on Twitter at trivia_chick.
Okay, I'll have that linked below, and we will see you next time.
Sounds good.
Thanks for listening to this episode of I Heart Animation. If you like what you've heard, make sure to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform or to the I Heart Movies YouTube channel. Make sure to follow my co-host as well. Any relevant links will be in the description for easy access. We'll be back soon with another brand new episode, so thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.